Hello and welcome to this special episode of Head On, and we have a very distinguished personality with us today. Senior Congress leader, one of India's leading intellectuals, parliamentarian and author, Dr. Shashi Tharoor.
Nice to see you. How are you?
Welcome. The last time we spoke here on a campaign trail in Goa, a lot has happened since then. Congress lost elections, then we had defections, your own election for the presidency of the Congress party. A very general question, where do you see things heading from here on leading to the 2024 general
I think it's a very important election because the BJP has had two terms during which many of the things they've done have fundamentally changed the character of our society and our polity. And I think that those of us who disagree with that need to find the capacity to resist more effectively. It's as simple as that. If we continue with business as usual, I think that we will only have ourselves to blame if the BJP is able to persist in continuing. And I think, therefore, the importance of both coordinating those who are like-minded about the kind of India we want to see in the future, as well as those of us within the party who believe we can appeal to the public who didn't vote for us on the last couple of occasions to come back to us. I believe that challenge is still open before us. I don't think it's already over. I've always argued that people are not as happy with the BJP government as the government would like to imagine. For example, there's record high unemployment. There is record inflation, a record by recent year standards. There's also undoubtedly serious problems when it comes to everything from the living conditions of ordinary people to their ability to actually cope with some of the things that are happening. And there's also that a spreading of hatred in our society against minorities, and in particular against the Muslim minority in North India, which is hurting us and damaging us both domestically and internationally. So all of these things are worth resisting, and we should find a way of...
But do you think any political opposition dispensation right now is in a position to capitalize on these fault lines?
Well, if we don't, we have ourselves to blame, because the BJP will do everything it can to keep itself in power. That's their job. And we have to do everything we can to make sure that our message is heard by the voters. You see, the challenge for us as a responsible opposition is to be able to say to the public, we understand what your pain is. We understand that for the last 8.5, now 9, almost 9 years, that you have not really had any improvements in your life for this government, despite all their speeches and talk. But we understand that so far you have not found us a viable alternative. Here's why we are a viable alternative. Come to us and we will improve your lives. I mean, that's got to be the core message. And to my mind, it's a message the Congress party is very capable of giving, because the more we look back on that last 10 years of Dr. Manmohan Singh's government, the better it seems by comparison with what we've gone through. Here we've gone through demonetization, inflation, unemployment, COVID lockdown, all sorts of problems, migrant workers suffering. I mean, the closing down of MSMEs, so many problems in our country during this government's rule. Should we not stand up against this?
So do you also think that in many ways, society is also becoming very polarized, and the opposition space is right now failing to understand this phenomenon and tackle it with an appropriate response?
Well, there are two ways of looking at that. I agree with you. Society has become more polarized, particularly in northern India, and particularly because of the assiduous efforts of people in the ruling party and those associated with the ruling establishment. They have managed, because their political objective was to create a consolidated Hindu identity, and that Hindu identity, even half that would be enough for them to win elections in a multi-party polity. Because, if Hindus are 80%, you get half of them 40%, that's it, you keep winning. That's kind of the political logic behind what they're doing, and that's why polarization has been pursued with such enthusiasm. What we have to say to even some of those 40% is, tell us, is your life better now because of anything this government has done? What has improved in your life? If 5 years ago you voted, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, you voted for Mr. Modi because you thought you'd get a job, have you got a job now? Where is your condition improved? These people are talking about, bombing Pakistan or, assaulting Muslims in your name. How does that help improve your condition in life? You decide. If you want somebody who can take care of your economic needs, the party of Dr. Manmohan Singh has a better track record than the party of Mr. Modi does. That's the kind of message that I believe would work.
But I think the major complaint against the Congress party that it is not showing enough fighting spirit. And many of your leaders with whom we have also spoken, even in Goa, you have seen many desertions. They are disillusioned. It is not that they are only shifting because they want to be on the side of the power, but they also feel that there is no future where they are right now. Don't you think the party needs to address this fundamental aspect first before convincing the voters that it's a viable alternative?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. We need to be able to do that. We need to get our act together internally, and we need to communicate that effectively to the voters. And then, of course, we also do need to build coalitions. I think dividing votes with like-minded parties is unfortunate because if we have similar ideologies and we don't really disagree, we should have a realistic understanding amongst ourselves as to who is strong and where. Let's face it, in the majority of states, Congress is the strongest alternative to the BJP. In some states, we are not, and if we acknowledge that, the others should also acknowledge us. It's a pity when you see these parties dividing each other, and thereby the BJP squeezes through. We saw that in Goa as well in the last assembly elections.
One criticism, and I'm asking you this very frankly because there are two major state elections. One is over, second is just few days away. And the criticism is that the face of the Congress party, Rahul Gandhi, is on a Bharat Jodo Yatra when he should be actually campaigning during these two elections. If you were in Rahul Gandhi's place, what would you have done?
No, look, I don't want to second guess leadership. They're entitled to make their own decisions. After all, we ourselves are criticizing the BJP for being a one-man party, that everything Mr. Modi goes and says, don't worry who your candidate is, vote for me on the lotus symbol. Do we want to make the Congress party a mirror of that? We should all have the capacity to go and do our bits, and we should all be able to do it. So the party drew up a list of star campaigners, and they chose who should be the ones speaking for them. And many of those star campaigners went. Some, like Rahul Gandhi, did not find it possible to go to Himachal, though he has been to Gujarat at least once, and I hope he'll go again. In my case, I'm not on either star campaigners list, so I can't tell you what I can contribute. But the party should know.
You are on the star campaigners list in Goa, but you are not in the star campaigners list in other states. Do you think that has something to do with your election?
I think the party has to decide what is best for them.
See, you want to link it to the election and the
I am not going to do.
past.
I mean, why should I do the job of a journalist? The journalists analyze and draw conclusions. Politicians just do their best and keep doing their best, and I'm doing that.
So do you also, because in many of the interviews you have given before your election, you said that the dynastic people of this country are kind of looking for freshness in the Congress party. Do you think what happened during the election and what is happening after that, is that happening?
See, don't forget that was an internal party election. And inevitably, it was an electorate that is really consisting of people who are party workers, who are experienced, but are very much part of the existing party organizational structure and establishment. And it was they I had to appeal to. It was not an election amongst the general public. Had it been even amongst the broader mass of party workers and the general public, perhaps there would have been some difference in the numbers, maybe not in the result, because ultimately a party will get the leadership it wants, it deserves. And therefore, I have no complaints in the sense that I think that it is very clear that the party decided that this is the kind of way they wanted to go forward. I will say, however, that we do need some way of being able to appeal to voters who didn't come to us in the last two elections.
Yeah.
We got 19% in 2014, we got 19% in 2019. We can't afford to have 19% in 2024. We need to bring some voters back. How we do it, the party has to decide. I offered one possible way forward, which is me, but there will certainly be other ways forward that the party will need to identify. But we can't stick to where we were. That's very clear. Business as usual will not work.
So absolutely, business as usual will not work. And one of the very crucial aspects of last two elections, Rahul Gandhi as the face of the campaign, you can call it a prime ministerial candidate or the campaign chief or whatever. People have rejected that face twice. Right now, it looks like Congress party is trying to reposition itself to give the same face for the third time. Do you think it's a politically smart strategy, or Congress party needs to take lessons from the last elections and look beyond Rahul Gandhi?
Is it really the same face? I think Rahul has successfully revived and transformed his own image with the Bharat Jodo Yatra. I mean, apart from quite literally, it's not the same face. It's not a very richly bearded face. It is also a face which I think has a number of new attributes associated with it because of the Yatra. Here is a man who has been persistent, who has been 70 days, is going to walk for 150 and who has stuck to it. Here is somebody who is accessible. He has met with all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life. Here is somebody who has a number of issues and themes he's taken up. Each day there's a different issue, a different constituency, a different cause that he's identified with. Here is somebody who attracts new voices. Some of the critics of the party from the NGO, civil society community have come and showed him support. So it's not the same face. It's not the face that was so successfully
evolution, yes.
caricatured by the BJP. It is now, I think, in many ways, a new image that Rahul Gandhi is presenting to the nation. And I think that you should all be paying attention to that, because it would be a mistake to see it purely as the same face. Having said that, I think obviously he should come with others alongside him to show the voters people of ability and experience. And he should also come with associations with other parties where that's possible, because ultimately there is also mathematics in election,
Yeah.
not only chemistry.
Absolutely.
Chemistry that he brings to the voters may still work better than
Chemistry
it did
needs to
last time,
translate into
but
arithmetic.
also should be arithmetic. And there, unfortunately, if four like-minded parties take even 5% each, that essentially could destroy our chance of getting the 40% we need to defeat the BJP. So these are some of the important elements we'll have to focus on.
So every country goes through certain phases. Now, post-independence phase is a long Congress phase. Now we are certainly and conclusively in a different phase. The Congress phase was quite spread over decades. Do you think the present phase where we are is a personality-driven phase, or we are also going to see a multiple decade-long phase that we're seeing right now?
Phases keep changing in our politics, right? So under Indira Gandhi, you had a very strongly personality-driven, very strongly personality and ideology-driven phase. Then you had a phase where you had coalition politics. I mean, though Janata Party was one party for 3 years, it was de facto a coalition and broke up into coalition. And subsequently, for about 25 years, we had coalition governments. I mean, not even Narasimha Rao's government had a majority. So no government had a majority between 1989 and 2014. So you really had an amazing period of coalition governance. Now from 14, you again have single-party governance, and again you have a personality cult, and again you have an individual leader trying to attract votes in his own name only. If you are a student of history, you'll say inevitably he's going to be eventually succeeded by a much more democratic, broad-based approach.
Is this a personality-driven?
Will that happen in 24, or will you have to wait till 29?
But is this a personality-driven phase or an ideology-driven phase?
It's always a bit of both. In the case of Mrs. Gandhi, it was Indira Gandhi as a figure larger than life, and also Garibi Hatao and a socialist slogan and program that was ideologically driven. In the case of Mr. Modi, it is Narendra Modi as a figure larger than life, and also Hindutva as an ideology that is strongly driven. And I think that it always goes together. You can never have just a personality devoid of a message or an ideology, and that's it. To my mind, Hindutva does not answer the problems of the nation. And the problems of the Aam Aadmi in this country are unemployment, inflation, jobs, a better future for their children, coexistence and harmony with others, and so on. And of course, for some of us, it's also India's place in the world, our ability to attract support globally, our ability to defend our borders effectively, all of that. That's also important. Now, you can't have just an individual pushing what is frankly a divisive ideology and expect that alone to be the answer to all our problems.
So, last two questions. First, do you think the opposition space or a liberal space failed to understand the sentiments of the majority and catered to them for a long period of time that gave opportunity to the other side to rise with the might that they have? Or do you blame the society to fall into the trap of this divisive agenda that you call it?
No, I would say that the majority of Indians actually believe in coexistence and harmony. I am still convinced that an agenda that says that Hinduism is about identity, that Hinduism believes in bashing non-Hindus on the head, is not only not truly Indian, it's not even truly Hindu. I am a student of Swami Vivekananda since my teenage years. I know of what he taught the world, and I know it well. I can tell you that we can have a long argument for which we don't have time today, that the true Hindu actually embraces difference, accepts different ways of worshipping God.
So, do you think the political setup, the liberal political setup, failed to understand the sentiments or the issues of the majority?
I think that there was a failure perhaps to defend from within the same idea of Hinduism. Instead, it was caricatured as godless secularists on the one hand versus believing Hindus on the other. I believe there is a valid debate to be had amongst believing Hindus between Hindutva brand of Hinduism and inclusive liberal Hinduism, which is what I believe is still the majority view amongst most Hindus if you really talk to them. I can tell you that a number of people who voted for the BJP have come to me, having read my book, The Hindu Way, or my book of Why I'm a Hindu, and said to me that they really feel that I gave them voice also. that it was their understanding of how they grew up as Hindus that speaks to me and to what Swami Vivekananda taught us. So I believe that there is room for that debate, and certainly you may be right that we never engage in that debate. But it's better late than never. We should point out that even for Hindus like myself, or Digvijay Singh is a far more practicing Hindu than me in the sense that he really observes rituals and all these things. And there are people like that who do not agree with Hindutva, but who are totally strong, Kattar Hindus.
Yeah.
And they're also there in the,
And
in
if
the
you
politically
fundamentally
liberal
believe
space.
that the liberal space or the liberal political parties need to engage with that space, right?
I would say that we are engaging with that space, and we are sometimes attacked for so-called soft Hindutva. I would disagree. I think what we're talking about is real Hindu dharma, but it's not Hindutva of any sort, because Hindutva is not religion, it's a political ideology. Whereas Hindu dharma is about the way we practice our beliefs and our faith in our own personal space. And as seekers of truth within Hinduism, we have an understanding of Hinduism that is not compatible with the political dogma of Hindutva.
So, final question: do you think at this point, when we are probably 1.5 years away from the 2024 general election, probably a very decisive election in the history of our country, your idea of India is withering away?
I don't think it's withering away, but I think it needs defending. There is an ongoing struggle for India's soul. And the question of whether India is a pluralist, diverse civilization which has a need for politics of inclusion, or whether India is an old, pristine Hindu land that got invaded by Muslims and British and so on, and therefore it has to reassert its Hindu glory, those two ideas are fundamentally incompatible ideas, and there is a struggle going on between them. At the moment, you're right that their idea is in the ascendant and ours is on the defensive. But I still believe that fundamentally an idea that has had such a long history in our country cannot just disappear overnight. And I believe the struggle is worth waging and the battle can be won.
So, Dr. Tharoor, before we let you go, we have your book, The Hindu Way, here. I'd like you to autograph it for us.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure talking to you.